if you went beyond Neil's pub up around the corner,
Yeah.
it went over the road there, and it went under the road. Different. At Jennings's, the big house, it went. They went over the railway.
Yeah.
Jennings is a couple of 100 yards away.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And the stonework is still there.
Oh, perfect. Everything was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose they were cheap enough times to do things. But
They
it was a
did
lot
keep
worse.
well.
And have you noticed that, like a hen,
Yeah.
you know, it goes in through the rock, that there's a lane in through the rock. Have you noticed that
That's
still
right.
today?
Yeah.
It crossed the road and went straight into a very high between the rocks.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's like an old deserted lane now. It's a lovely thing heading down towards Ringaroy. You went to the pictures. That was the most I did. Cycled into the every change in the cinema, and life was very quiet. Nothing was happening. Uh, Everything was scarce. Very little fuel. We had only oil lamps, of course, and until 1949 we got the electricity, and the train was the only thing that was happening, really. And I can't recall about toilets because I know for a fact that in 1932, when the train went from Baltimore to the Eucharistic Congress, that was the first big thing that happened in the country. Yeah. They didn't stop until Portlaoise to go to the toilet. There were no toilets in the train. Things were primitive, but safe just the same. Tensions were running very high. There were several hundred people in the station in Skibbereen, and the train, it had been delayed coming, of course, by different demonstrations and things, and the crowd actually took over the train. There was nothing we could do, and they all went to Baltimore, stripped all the fittings out of the garages, and took anything they could find out of them, but it made it back anyway. And then on Saturday night, there was a big demonstration organized by a local, very much active man, Michael O'Driscoll, who was chief of the O'Driscoll clan. I'm sure you heard of I've heard, yeah. And Dermot and John O'Donovan and a few more, and they had an effigy of Dr. Andrews, and he it was burnt in the square, and they were once throwing gravel at the platform party who didn't agree, I'd say, with the politics coming into it, about what was happening, and despite court cases and everything, James P. O'Regan, whose daughter now has Shannon Vale poultry place in Clonakilty. Yeah. He was the man that took them to court, but he was going to had to put down 3,000 if he was to go ahead, and he couldn't do that. So it fizzled out. Things started immediately, really too quick for gave no chance at all. Great haste. They were on the following day or two, taking up the rails, making sure that it wouldn't ever again open, and uh, there said the rails were sent to Nigeria, and that the boat sank is one that some say they got there. Maybe there was more than one boat, but some lot of the rails got lost on the way to Nigeria. The pay for being gatekeeper was very small. I suppose it took in so much for the house, but it was 1 and 6pence per week to be. That's what on duty you got, and you had the house, and say my uncle Jack Welch, he had a big wage, £9 something. Yeah, that was considered a very big wage at the time. Yeah. He was spent the weekend then writing up kind of time sheets about what they had done, all that. And I often got a spin home, of course,
Yeah.
and by the train.
Yeah.
They just slow down and I jump off.
You too.
Yeah. I was a junior clerk.
Junior clerk.
Yeah, because I had to go down to sell the tickets too. There were only two clerks there.
Okay.
Aidan O'Hara and myself.
In Skibbereen.
Yeah, we were doing the written work because all these sheets with parcel from Sichuan to Sichuan. They had to sign
So you
for it.
to sign for it.
We made up the sheets and kept the records, and if goods were going away, we calculated the charge for sending it to such a place, you know, and everything.
To weigh them all.
Yeah, to all that. Garage proprietor, to be, he was just opening up, came over to the station to me a week or two before it closed and offered me a job. And I was with him for 30 years until it closed. I was manager down at Christy Crowell's garage until it closed in 1989, 1990. They were the Volkswagen dealers. Yeah. And in between, I had to postpone going to them for a month because the census of population was on, and I did Shirkin, Cape, and Ringaroiga in the census that took a month. I had something lined up when it was going. So yeah, I had some of them went away. My uncle retired. The older ones didn't go anywhere. They just dropped out. But some went to Cork, and some of them vanished away to the Murnans now, went to Cork. They had come from Cork, I'd say, to Cree Station. I remember the day they came, their stuff went out on one of these trolleys on the track. Came into the station. The one that you, and they push along, yeah. That you push along. Yeah. These hadn't that you had to manually push them along. Right. And they'd sit up on the side of it, then when they come to an incline and let it roll from itself. Right. Yeah. And I remember another thing I remember was I went straight to work without going to bed in the morning. President Kennedy was elected in 1960. I stayed up all night watching it, and I had a little motorbike that time. I went in on the motorbike to work. Exhausted but happy.
That was important for a lot of people, Irish people.
Oh, it was. President Kennedy? Yeah. Oh, yes, he was. I considered him like Jack Charlton. Same thing. Yeah. 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 So they claimed him in Skibbereen, that he was the Fitzgerald side. They went up to Cork to see him and all from just across the river there, the Fitzgeralds. But the ones in Wexford got the better of it. They were the real ones. I missed out going to Chipperfield Circus because somebody had to stay at home to open the gates to leave the train, go from Baltimore to Cork, and to let it back in when it came back. And it was a wonderful trip that I missed out on. The whole family went except me. And it was very cheap. It was only 14 and ninepence for a ticket on the train and into the circus also. And 7 and 6 for children, a great evening out. It went at 3 o'clock and it left Cork at 9. Hello. There was a high standard of safety maintained on the railway between Skibbereen and Baltimore, but there were 2 teams of maintenance of 3 maintenance men. Jack Welch was a ganger over one of these teams. Early each morning, every single yard of the track had to be checked before the first train went by. This was achieved by each maintenance man doing a section each. They checked for any obstruction on the track, any animal which may have got inside the fences, any broken rail, broken sleepers, etc. Once a week, the gangers checked with a special steel gauge every third rail to ensure that the 5'3" distance between the rails was correct. In our time at Bunleek, we had one real emergency. It was a wet, wintry night. We had just received a phone alert from Cree Station that the train was leaving Cree Station. Jack Welch opened the gates across the road. There was a large red light on top of each gate, visible to oncoming traffic, if any. He had another large handheld signal lamp with which he could hold up to show the train driver a green or a red light. Suddenly a lorry approached from the Skibbereen direction, never saw the red lights, struck the gate, burst it open, ran over the hand signal lamp, which burst into flames, and the lorry crossed the track and hit the second gate before stopping. The driver immediately tried to reverse and managed to get the lorry wedged in the centre of the track. We all rushed out to see what was happening. Jack shouted for the detonators, which were for emergency use. He ran towards the oncoming train. Meanwhile, the train driver and fireman noticed that the signal was out of action and they had commenced slowing down as a precaution. Jack had gone 200 yards towards the train and he quickly placed 2 or 3 detonators on the rails. When the engine passed over them, they exploded with a mighty bang, and the driver immediately jammed on the brakes, and the train came to a screaming stop 10 yards from the lorry, the driver of which was standing in the middle of the track with his arms in the air shouting, "Stop, stop." We all ran to the back of the house to escape. The train had passed Jack at that stage, and he came running back. We were all in deep shock, but as it happened, the lorry was freed in no time, undamaged, and backed off the track. The train was able to proceed in under half an hour, and little damaged to both gates, and the headlamp was destroyed. Luckily, nobody was injured. On March the 31st, 1961, Good Friday. I shall never forget seeing grown men crying bitterly. It was the first time I heard the word redundant. Strangely, it did not have a great effect on me. I was only 21 and had been only 2 or 3 months on the job, but it had a devastating effect on the men who had given their lives to the railway. Entire families were facing an uncertain future.